and welcome to Treasury Notes, a financial education program from the West Virginia State Treasurer's Office. I'm your host, Gina Joins. When it comes to education, State Treasurer John Perdue strives to provide opportunities for West Virginians of all ages. Coming up later in today's show, we'll take a closer look at how the Treasurer's Office is providing continuing education for West Virginia state agencies. The goal is to help agencies provide the most efficient and secure services to the public. Plus, when it comes to career plans, the West Virginia State Treasurer's Office has programs like the When I Grow Up Essay Contest, which encourages kids to dream big. It also encourages their families to start preparing early for higher education with tools like the SMART529 College Savings Plan. Today, we'll discuss why higher education is essential to a successful future and how you can prepare for the hefty price tag that comes along with it. Joining me now to talk more about these issues is our certified educational planner, Jamie Dickinson. She's from right here in West Virginia. And Jamie, thank you so much for joining us here on the program today.
Gosh, thanks for having me.
It's always great to have you on the program, and it's been a little while since we have had you on the program. So I really want to start by just discussing with you a little bit about the importance of higher education, and then we can get into a little bit about what you do in your role. So let's talk about higher education.
I know there's like the whole thing going around is like, why should I get a college degree and go in debt and all that stuff? But like, if you look globally, the United States has got to compete, and higher education around the world is so predominant now. We've got to be able to come out and compete. And even if you look at, like, in my day when I was young, they had, like, they would call it blue collar or white collar. Now even the blue collar jobs are 4-year degrees, like construction management, you know, auto body repair, things like that. Even things that you used to not need to have a degree for are now becoming 4-year degrees at universities.
And we're going to talk a lot about different options for students as they look at higher education a little bit later in the show, because I know there are other options. There's 2-year degrees, there's different trade schools, so it might not be a traditional college. But as far as what you do in your role, you're considered a certified educational planner. What is that? And I think you are the only one certified here in the state of West Virginia to do this type of work. So if you could just explain a little bit about what your role is.
I'm like an independent high school guidance counselor. You know, I mean, our high school guidance counselors are so overworked, and, you know, they're dealing with the drugs and the alcohol and all that stuff, and I just get to deal with the happy, let's go to college stuff. So, you know, I mean, when you think about it, we're talking about parents, you know, most big financial decision, you know, this is a lot of money. And then you're talking about the kids, it's their first big grown-up decision. And I think that that takes a lot of time and a lot of planning. You know, I didn't have a lot of planning, and I did well, but I wish I'd have had the chance to sit down and work with somebody over my 4 years of high school, like what I do with the kids, because it's really an important decision. And, you know, I mean, statistically, if you look at it, people spend more time planning their vacation than they do for their kids to go to college. And I mean, that's like not a good statistic to have.
So let's talk about planning. It's not a single decision. Can you give us an outline of some of the steps that need to be taken to create a really strong plan for a college-bound student or a student who wants some type of higher education after high school?
Okay, so there's 5 things that they should think about, like as their plan. First of all, good grades. I mean, if you think about it, you know, we live in a society where people are judging you based on criteria. And what people are looking at is grades. So when a university is looking to give out money, the first thing they're going to look at is grades, right? People will call me and say, you know, we want to look for scholarships. Well, it derives from the word scholar, which means good grades. So the first thing you want to do, even starting in middle school, is to make sure that your kids are making good grades. So, you know, they don't have to make straight A's, but A's and B's. And if you've got a kid who struggles, they've got to learn how to ask for help. So get them tutored, get them some help so that they get used to asking for help when they're older. Because sometimes if you have a kid that struggled in school, they may struggle at work, right? Organization may be an issue. Time management may be an issue. So you really have to like catch those things early. So first of all, good grades. Second of all, good test scores. If you look at most universities, when you talk scholarship money, like how to pay for college, it's like if you have this GPA and this test score, this is the amount of money you get. And if you look, the higher the test scores are, the more opportunity for money that you have. So that's the second thing, is good ACT, SAT scores. The third thing you need to work on is their major. Like, what are they going to do for the next 60 years of their life? And, you know, I feel when I work with kids, I want them to do what they're naturally gifted at. You know, I'm naturally good at running my mouth. I had to turn my mouth into my money, right? I get paid to talk. It's a good thing. That's what I got called down in high school for all the time, was talking. So I had to turn my mouth into my money. The fourth thing is your college list. You know, all colleges are not created equal. Some colleges give money, some colleges don't. And so you have to know where to look for money. And then the fifth is their extracurriculars. I feel like a lot of times parents will get their kids so overextended in extracurriculars that they become like mediocre at a bunch of things. And you know, if you look at these universities, when they start giving out scholarships, they want kids who are really good at like one thing.
Right, that's some great advice. What about when to start this planning process? I know you talked about the 5 things that are important, but some of the things you're talking about start as soon as middle school. So when should you, as a parent, really start thinking about preparing your child for higher education?
Well, you know, we're very lucky here because we have the Brighter Babies program. So to me, you should start saving as soon as they're born, because the cost of college is going up dramatically. I mean, it's $25,000 a year in state at our public universities, upwards of $75,000 a year at some of the mega selective schools. So if you take that, multiply it by 4 years, by the number of kids you have, plus the fact it's going up higher than the rate of inflation, I mean, it's no wonder parents can't sleep when they're thinking about how to pay for their kids for college. So, you know, you should start saving, because if you don't save, the federal government's going to loan it to you at a high interest rate, right? So we're very lucky here in West Virginia that State Treasurer John Perdue has done such great work with the SMART529 plan. So you should start saving. But when you start looking for scholarships and all that stuff, really the real work starts in like middle school, because that's when you've got to start getting ready for high school. But grade school, you've just got to get your kids, you know, make sure they're hitting their benchmarks on their standardized testing, make sure they're getting their math. You know, by the end of 5th grade, going into 6th grade, they really need to be secure with their math. I mean, like me having a tutoring center for all these years, that's really, math is like the biggest thing. I think even more so than English. Right. Math is an issue. Right.
You mentioned Bright Babies, so I did want to bring that up. The SMART529 College Savings Program has a Bright Babies initiative where $100 is invested in the account if you open the account within the first year of the child's life. So that's a great incentive to start early.
And that's a hint, like, right? Like, how big of a hint can you have?
Exactly.
The state treasurer is giving you $100 when you have a baby, because that's a hint. Start now.
Start now. Start now. And it doesn't take, it takes $1 just to open an account. So it's a good place to start, especially if you are a new mom or dad. It's a great way to start saving. Before we go to the break, there is another question I wanted to ask you about where a child should attend college. And since I'm bringing this up, I wanted to bring up the fact that you are an author as well as a speaker and expert in education. You wrote a book recently, and I think the title is Too Smart for, you have it there, Too Smart for the Ivy League.
Too Smart for the Ivy League.
So let's take a few minutes to talk about where a child should go to college or higher education, because sometimes the best and most expensive isn't always the right fit for a student.
You know, quite frankly, I'm of the philosophy now that you go where you can get the best education for the least amount of money. Because to be honest with you, the name of the school is not what makes your kids successful. You know, what they had to be successful, they had long before ACT, SAT, and GPA. It's their hard work, their perseverance, their integrity, their work ethic. I mean, all of those things. And when I'm like, you are not a good parent if you put your whole financial future at risk to put your kids into a named school. I mean, if you're a multimillionaire and you've just got a few $500,000 to waste, that's fine. But, you know, nothing says you have to pay a fortune to have a good education. I mean, I graduated from Marshall University, undergrad and grad. I do these business boot camps for other educational consultants who come around the country for me to do boot camps to teach them how to be in the educational consulting business. With my Marshall MBA, I'm teaching Harvard, Princeton, Yale, MIT grads coming. So, you know, the name of the school does not signify success. And, you know, with the Promise Scholarship in West Virginia, it's really hard to beat going out of state to school. But when you get these private universities, you know, a lot of times private universities get a bad rap because they have a higher price tag, but you have a lot more likelihood of getting scholarship money. So, you know, it's got to be whatever is a good fit emotionally, socially, academically, and lastly, financially for the parents. And you really cannot figure that out until April of senior year.
Right.
Because until you know the kids are in, until you know the kids can stay in, and until you know you're not broke by the time they graduate from college, you cannot figure out where your kids are going.
Yeah.
And I've been doing this for 21 years. This is my 21st year. And I'm always amazed at where the kids end up, because where the kids end up at school has a whole lot to do with how they're treated during this whole entire process.
Sure. Well, I wanted to touch on something you brought up in this last question, is about the Promise Scholarship, because I do think it's important to clarify. A lot of people in West Virginia, they hear Promise Scholarship and they hear SMART 529. Can you give us a brief explanation of the difference between the two and why they are both valuable and not the same thing?
Well, there's a big misconception that when you get the Promise Scholarship, then everything is paid for, and that's not true. So if the cost of attendance at Marshall or WVU or any of the other universities is $25,000 a year, Promise is going to be $4,750. It's capped per year. That's still almost $20,000 more that you've got to come up with elsewhere. So that is either going to be from students' merit scholarships or savings, out of mom and dad's pocket, which is either going to be saving in the SMART 529 plan, which is a savings plan, or getting student loans, which is where we don't want it to come from, because these kids are graduating with debt that's, when you're young, you don't get what debt feels like. When you're my age, it feels like an elephant sitting on your chest, right? So I try to encourage these kids not to go in debt. Just go where you can get the best education for the least amount of money. But the Promise Scholarship is a merit-based scholarship, not based on need. And then the SMART 529 is a college savings plan, like a Christmas club, where you save your money and then it's Christmas and then you spend it. So you save it as you go through, and then when college comes, you spend it.
And parents can save, grandparents can save, aunts and uncles. There are a lot of ways to invest in the 529.
Right. Even if you're a young person who thinks you may have children one day and you want to start one, you could start one for a niece or a nephew, and then if you have your own babies, then you can change the beneficiary. It's great. And, we're very blessed in West Virginia that we have a great 529 plan.
All right. We're going to talk a lot more about 529s and the work that you do, Jamie, as an educational consultant. But first, we're going to take a short break. When we return again, we'll talk about how families can prepare for the cost of higher education. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
No one's journey looks the same, but everyone's needs a start. SMART 529 College Savings Plans.
Welcome back to Treasury Notes. I'm your host, Gina Joins. On the show with us today is Jamie Dickinson, a certified education planner. Today we're talking about how students and their families prepare for college. Jamie, thanks again for being with us. You're here in West Virginia. We're blessed to have you here. You're also an author, and you talk a lot about the ways to pay for college. And of course, we're here talking about the SMART 529 College Savings Plan, but there are ways that students and parents can prepare outside of saving through a 529 to prepare for that cost of college. Talk a little bit about that.
There's really only 5 places to look for money for college. First and foremost, the federal government, but of course that's going to be need-based. So if you have low-income parents, they can afford college. If you have high-income parents, they can afford college. What's breaking the back of most Americans is the normal, everyday double income. That's the people right now that I think are struggling with higher ed. Second of all is the state. So here in the state of West Virginia, the Promise Scholarship, we have the STEM Scholarship, the Science, Technology, Engineering, Mathematics Scholarship, the Underwood Teacher Scholarship. So you got a lot of statewide scholarships. The third is the universities themselves, which I think is where the majority of your money comes from. That's from your grades and from your test scores and from your extracurriculars. Fourth is outside scholarships, and that's like a big buzzword, you know, but if you look at overall financial aid, it only accounts for like 2% of all financial aid, but there's still some really good websites out there that the kids should go, like, to search for scholarships. And then fifth is out of mom and dad's pocket, which is where we don't want it to come out of. So that's where you either are smart and you start saving money in a SMART 529 College Savings Plan, or you borrow your money from the federal government to pay for it. So it's either pay me now or pay me later.
Right, and you talk about those outside scholarships, and it reminds me, when I was in high school, I did receive a few of those outside scholarships, but they were small amounts. And I think that's what maybe a misconception, that my kid's going to get a scholarship, but how much is that scholarship really going to cover?
Well, let me tell you, some of them are hefty. I mean, I had a student last year that got $120,000 in outside scholarship monies, but he was at my office every Sunday, filling out forms, filling out applications. Part of the problem with scholarships, kids won't write the essays. You know, it takes a lot of paperwork to fill it out. One of my kids this year got a $10,000 a year scholarship from Amazon. One of my kids got a $10,000 a year scholarship from Coca-Cola. So those scholarships are out there. So you can go to like unigo.com or fastweb.com and start searching now. And you don't have to wait till you're a senior. I mean, I had my ninth graders start searching for scholarships, but you have to fill out the paperwork, and that's the big thing.
And these are students who obviously have a vested interest, and their families have a vested interest, because they're getting the help they need.
Right.
There are a lot of families out there who are not going to a counselor or an educational planner, and they're struggling to do this on their own. They need to be smart about it, and they need to start saving. And you made mention that you have them start for scholarships early, but what about the saving aspect of it? It's never, we always say in the treasurer's office, it's never too late to start saving. Earlier the better, but never too late.
Oh, yeah, because a little bit of something is better than nothing. I mean, even when your kids are young and everybody buys them all those toys that you pile up in the garage, just tell them, give us cash. You know, my dad used to say cash was the gift that kept on giving. So just give us cash. And then that way you can put it in your 529 plan. And then when we get on a roll like this where the market's going up, you know, that's when it is. And you know, I love in the 529 you have some of these programs where they rebalance. So as the kids get older, it gets, you know, less, you know, risky, likely, less risky. And so those are very good too. So, I mean, yeah, you should always try to save, even if it's the last minute and you open the 529 and you put your money in and then you pay it out to university. We still have tax credits here in West Virginia that you could easily try for.
That was the next thing I was going to touch on a little bit, is there are other incentives. There are tax incentives to investing in a 529 college savings program. And as we mentioned earlier, there's the Bright Babies. There's a lot of incentives. So maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Well, see, 529 is the number of the Internal Revenue Service code that made them legal. So that's where it comes from, the Internal Revenue Service. So it's really a way of saving money. Most people are used to retirement plans where you put your money in and it grows, you know, interest, like tax-free for whatever. And so the 529 are your savings plan for college. And, you know, at this rate, I mean, I know there's like a $250,000 some kind of cap on it, but at this rate, you know, as expensive as college is, you just need to put in as much as you can possibly put in.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that, carving out that space to save for higher education. We were talking in the break about the fact that families are pressured nowadays. They have a lot of different responsibilities. You're supposed to save for retirement. You might have aging parents. You have young kids. You're really making choices when it comes to your money.
And it's sad because, you know, like I call that like that sandwich generation. You're sandwiched in, and, you know, I think people get very frustrated and very aggravated about what they should do and how they should save, you know. And, you know, I mean, tennis shoes now are $100, $120. I mean, kids are expensive, period, before they even go to college. So, you know, I think that's where you have to do good financial planning. Maybe if you have a financial planner or somebody that you can get some help from. That was one reason why I wrote the book, because I was like, the book really is geared more towards younger parents, like parents with younger kids, so that they can plan for it. So like, I really want everybody to know, like, step by step, like what you can do to make sure that you don't go broke trying to pay for college.
And as you said earlier, it makes a great gift. There's now a gift card option with the Smart 529, the gift of college. So really, it makes it easy to help a family out if that's something that you want to do.
You know, it's a great thing for grandparents to do. You know, I mean, a lot of times grandparents are always like, you know, what can I do for the kids? They call my office, you know, and say like, what can we do? You know, you can just give the gift of learning. I mean, there is nothing greater than that. You know, I don't care what anybody can strip away from you, but they can't ever strip your education away from you. You know, I mean, so the economy gets bad. So hopefully you could, you know, shift around and do something else if you need to, or you can move, or you can do things. But, you know, once you've got your education in place, you know, it does it. And here's what you and I know, like another reason to get educated, if you don't, employers will hold it against you. It's just a good reason for them not to give you a raise or not to pay you what you work, even if you're a hard worker. I mean, there's that whole thing. And I think every kid can go on to higher education. I think every kid has it in them to do something else. And it doesn't have to be a 4-year degree or a master's degree. It could be a 2-year degree. It could be a career and technical education. But, you know, I just think it makes kids feel better about themselves if they do. It's just a big decision, and you've got to have that commitment. And, you know, these kids have got to have the drive to stay in, because it's not like high school where, you know, if you don't make good grades at the university level, they just put you on academic probation and send you home. And then you are really messed up, because then you've just wasted a lot of money.
And 529s can be used at other types of higher education, not just 4-year schools.
Oh, yeah. And, you know, I grew up in Logan County, so, you know, think about this. When I grew up, boys tinkered with cars all the time, changed the oil, changed the tires and all that. You don't see a whole lot of that now. But that's now, auto body is now a 4-year degree. So these kids who love cars can come out of doing one of these auto body degrees and go to work for Mercedes, BMW, making $85,000, $90,000 a year. So now it's almost like if you love tinkering with your hands, or if you love doing things like that, you can go do something where you're going to get out and make good money. And I mean, and that's part of what it is. I mean, you know, my era, everybody was a coal miner and they made great money. And now with technology, those jobs have like gone down. And so, you know, I mean, it's tough to earn a living these days, even when you're highly educated.
Yeah, and that's why planning is important, and it's definitely key. Anything else you'd like to add just about what a parent should think about saving for the 529? I know there's a lot of myths out there. Anything else you'd like to add?
Well, first of all, I think parents need to have a conversation about it, because what I find is most parents do the ostrich thing and stick their head in the sand and pretend like it's going to go away. And I tell everybody, I say it all the time, these kids are going from diapers to diplomas just like that. So graduation will be here and it's coming. So you got to be prepared for it, right? Because if you don't prepare, then the only option that you're going to have is to borrow the money from the federal government. And then you got to work to pay it back. So, you know, I think the key is to just like sit down, do planning, you know, get books on it, tutor yourself on it and what you can do, but you just got to be prepared. I mean, if you've got kids, it's just something that you have to face.
All right. Jamie, thank you so much for joining us here today. We really appreciate you sitting down with us talking about educational planning and the Smart 529 College Savings Plan. And I want to mention that Jamie also has a lot of great advice on smart529.com. So you can go to the smart529.com website and have a blog from Jamie there with a lot more advice and a lot more interesting resources and information from you. So thanks again for being here with us today.
Thank you.
Appreciate having you. Well, from college planning to continuing education, Treasurer Purdue believes you're never too old or too experienced to learn. And in an ever-changing world, that is never more true than in the world of finance. Each year, the Treasurer's Office hosts a conference for state agencies to ensure they have the most up-to-date information for the proper procedures and guidelines to keep the state's money safe. Kim Ward has more.
When you make a payment to any business, you are putting a certain amount of trust in that business to do the right thing with your money. That trust is important to State Treasurer John Purdue, and he does all that he can to ensure the integrity of doing business in this state.
We put together cash receipts handbook and a credit card handbook to give you the tools you need in the toolbox to work for the future of business. practices for cash management.
The key to ensuring the proper handling of all state funds in agencies around the state is knowledge.
We do have a publication sales office that I am in charge of, and so we do handle cash and credit cards and just to keep up to date on what's out there and make sure we're doing everything correctly.
At the State Treasury Cash Management Conference, state workers learn the proper procedures for handling cash and credit cards.
They're not storing your actual credit card. They're actually sending it through a process to give a surrogate value that sort of preserves the last four so they can display it on your website or on the mobile phone, but they're actually not storing your credit card data. So if in the event that they're breached, then whatever's stolen is kind of useless.
In an age where more transactions are taking place digitally, it is important to know what options are available to provide added safety measures.
You would log into your Apple account, and then it would pull your payment credentials from your Apple Wallet. So you don't have to actually enter your credit card information into a payment page. So it's much more secure.
In addition to a refresher course on security measures and fraud prevention, the conference offers an opportunity to learn more about Treasury Office programs that state agencies can utilize in order to boost efficiency.
One in specific that I can't believe we haven't been taking advantage of is the lockbox system, and so that one in specific seems to be something that would fit in very well with some of our, at least one of our divisions that are collecting deposits on a daily basis, that we can protect our employees and protect our customers by using that service.
For state agencies, the lockbox service can shorten the processing time, which benefits the business and the consumer.
The customer gets that invoice, mails that coupon back to a P.O. box, where we basically receive that mail, process those statements, and deposit on behalf of that state agency.
In this ever-changing world of technology, the conference also provides a glimpse into trends businesses may encounter in the future.
It's not about the payment anymore. Payment is one piece of the puzzle that needs to be accounted for, but it's everything else as it relates to, do I know who the customer is? Can I offer them targeted discounts and targeted messaging?
What's coming down the pipe that we need to develop in the next couple of years? So that could be, maybe we should stand up a digital-only bank so that if somebody doesn't want to ever have to go into a branch, they can do that.
All in all, the Cash Management Conference is about staying ahead of the game.
We have to stay on the cutting edge of technology, and I fight with the legislature all the time, hoping that we can get agencies the best technology that is out there to be able to save money. Because you have the best technology, and you have the best practices, and you have the safeguards in place, you can make a big, big difference in managing money.
Reporting for Treasury Notes, I'm Kim Ward.
Thanks so much for that update, Kim. You can learn more about the West Virginia Treasury cash management functions and services on our website. Again, go to wvtreasury.com. That's all the time we have. Thanks for joining us today. Remember, you can always get the latest news and information from the State Treasurer's Office. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and on our website. Again, it's wvtreasury.com and SMART529.com for more information on the SMART529 College Savings Program. Keeping you informed on the Library Television Network, I'm Gina Joins with the West Virginia State Treasurer's Office.